We're going to be reacting to Bellula's Blizzard response to Midnight botched reveal. And as you all know, Midnight WoW had probably one of the most atrocious reveals for most expansions, with the Gamescom fiasco and all the drama and all the little issues that happen, and just across the board, retail WoW's hype was truly diminished by what was happening around, during, and just in the entire scene as a whole. People weren't happy from the trailer, the announcements, everything else. And Midnight WoW looks hype as shit. So I do want to see what Blizzard's actual response is, or if this is like a sensationalized titling, right? Let's just take a look.
You might have noticed something. Blizzard basically went a little bit quiet after the Midnight reveal didn't go to plan.
Oh, nice interruption.
Well, their lawyer's certainly different, but the Turtle WoW thing is a different video. This week, though, they have directly responded to the Midnight stuff. Not with a blue post in the forums apologizing and promising action, rather they've kind of just fixed it. So now, if you want to know what's officially been confirmed for Midnight, it is all there. Though there are a few caveats that I will get into. And that's not all for today's news, because a survey proves that Blizzard knows that Mythic Plus has a serious problem to fix, and
yeah, as I've been doing Mythic Pluses lately, and it's kind of rough because the people you play with from just the highest level to the lowest level, the consistency between people's skill level, like a rating doesn't really justify where somebody's at in terms of skill level, how they play, what they're capable of, what they're able to do. The rating is just a baseline feature. And it doesn't help as much as people would truly think. It's decent enough, but there's a lot of other things wrong with Mythic Plus rating, well, Mythic Plus dungeoning in general, aside from that.
And it maybe even suggests that their attempts will likely fail. And also, there's a big pile of nerfs, so let's get into it. Right, obviously, the Gamescom strategy did not go the way Blizzard intended, but there is some good news. We've now got an official source for everything in this huge series of blog posts. Essentially, every feature officially confirmed is now there and well documented on the site. Now, it's not quite everything. There are small details that we picked up from interviews with Blizzard that they have not committed to in blog format, which does kind of make sense. Interviews are for teases of things they can't commit to yet sometimes, but we do know that the big things like class reworks are actually getting blog posts soon anyway. So I'd say in many ways, this is a perfect response. Apologies and stuff are great, but this is kind of just what we actually wanted, all of the info. Though something was obvious right away, that this was done in a hurry. It's full of minor errors like double spaces and things. That stuff doesn't really matter though. These are well written, the tone and the information really does shine.
It is kind of interesting. I wonder if they hired back some of the people from the social media team and the proofreading and stuff like that. Because I know a lot of people that would handle blog posts, social media posts, and things of that nature were all let go. So seeing that we finally got that back, I wonder if some developer had to write that shit, or if they actually hired people back to, do the job that they fired these people from doing in the first place.
Through, I think it more just speaks to them knowing that there was a problem and absolutely trying to just get it fixed. And there's also new details that only someone close to the team would know, like say the Rift of Aln, which is now described as a, quote, primordial wound, which is a
interesting. So that's absolutely new. Because I was theory crafting one of my previous videos on how we actually get down to Haranda, the zone that the Harania call home. And we had no clue. I was saying it was underground. Like it was like a tunnel or a portal going underground into Azeroth's core area. And it turns out I was right, the Rift of Aln. But the fact that I had to theory craft and guess that shit instead of having the official confirmation for about 2 weeks is kind of funny.
Crazy lore implication to drop so casually. But the main thing is that this is now an official up-to-date source. We know that the Eversong gameplay zone is officially called Eversong Woods as an example. Or there's also
because people were calling it Qualtalas, Eversong, so there was multiple names for it. Like so many little things, like Bellula was bringing up here, so many little things were unconfirmed or misconstrued. It's good that it's here now, but it should never have happened in the first place.
Also, the UI updates page, which has got some new style options for the nameplates, which look fantastic by the way, and they've already solved one of my worries. The original boss alerts had instructions, and I was kind of worried that that would be going a step too far in simplifying the game. So, good news then, that in a newer screenshot, the instruction seems to be gone, And I'm fairly sure that's intentional because there are some other teases as well. One of those teases being a tiny bit more of the Unholy Death Knight changes. Check out these screenshots, right? One of them is clearly the current DK. It's on the Isle of Dorn, and we can see Unholy Assault and Legion of Souls sitting there on the cooldown manager. But further down the same page is a screenshot from the reworked Quel'Danas, and we immediately spotted a new ability. You see, the icon here belongs to Ebon Fever, which is currently a passive. But in this screenshot, it's an active ability on the hotbar, and it's also in the cooldown manager. So, things are changing, and within these screenshots, we do see some teasing.
Well, they did say they plan on reworking a lot of classes. They're going to remove abilities, add abilities, fine-tune certain classes, how certain abilities and things mesh together and work together. They did showcase that there was going to be a lot of changes across the board, a lot of changes in general to World of Warcraft to make it a more streamlined game. That's what they've been doing in Midnight WoW. From the leveling experience to the class experience to the guidelines, built-in add-ons, raiding, mob difficulty, so many things that were wrong with World of Warcraft they've been fixing. So this all kind of like fits and it's all kind of on track and makes sense.
Now, it wasn't all perfect. There were a few foibles, like the original Blog and Devour incorrectly stating that Havoc was getting the new Annihilator hero talents instead of Felscard, but it did not take them long to correct themselves for that one. So, overall, it's good news, and the important thing here is a hard enough confirmation that they know what went wrong, they know their strategy didn't land, so next time, I think we'll probably get direct updates. I mean, I hope as an example, they're trying to get Jade and WoWcast to talk about class changes and things like that. Anyway, hopefully some lessons have been learned and we can move on ahead to the alpha, but right now, we've actually got another thing to look at, and it is a survey. It's a survey that has people talking. With this survey hitting the timeline, we've got another round of
So every time a survey comes out, it's always super controversial because, for example, when the Classic Plus survey came out, people clung on to one thing out of like 70. For example, WoW token or transmog or whatever coming to Classic Plus. So the survey is not meant to be a one-to-one of exactly what they're going to add. They just want to get information about every potential thing because they sometimes think they know better than the player base. So sometimes they have to go ahead and ask people very generic, very broad questions to get as many answers as possible to see where their thought process, where the very loud minority's thought process, and where the vast majority who don't talk online landing, so they can get the correct information, the correct data.
solo queue Mythic Plus to talk about, and that's actually interesting for a few different reasons. Number one is this survey itself. It's all about fixing the group finder, but it doesn't mention anything like a solo queue. So let's take a look at the questions. It asks about the pre-made group finder automatically forming a group for leaders. That doesn't, of course, sound like a solo queue. It sounds a lot more like a system that accepts signups for you. Think about it this way. Say you want a mage with at least 1500 rating and an eye level of 700. The group would only appear to people who match those criteria, which would mean that those people, rather than clicking to apply, well, they could just click to join. That would mean no list of people to pick from, just the right person dropped into your group. I can see that being quite nice for a user experience on both sides. I can also see it be, say, blamed for a player that fits the criteria.
Sorry about that. What I said there was, that also seems like a kind of wonky process, because what if they take the wrong person and put it in the wrong group? Or that just seems like there's so many things that could go wrong. There's so many things that could be like misconstrued or mishandled. I'm super curious to the exact playstyle and desires of that, because it doesn't fit in perfectly with what I think would work well, at least in that context.
Well, isn't exactly what you would expect in terms of skill. To continue through the survey, there's a few other ideas. So one is a group leader getting a resilient key for the first group that they lead each week, which sounds kind of cool, but honestly, it's a little bit pointless. Once per week is a complete joke unless you specifically are starting with like a plus 10 clear, and even then, I think it's a fairly minor bonus, and ultimately, key depletion probably needs a rethink. Other options are more crests, which is fairly minor. People also do Mythic Plus for gear or weekly more than just the crests. An option is extra Valor Stones. I do want to, I was just thinking about the depletion. I think the depletion system is kind of wonky. I think each key should have like 2 lives or 3 lives instead of just instantly deranking.
Because sometimes, you can invite a healer. And like, for example, I had this recently. I joined the healer's key. He didn't have water. So he just bricked his own key. And that was the end of the key. I think a key should have 2 lives. I think the key just dying instantly and getting bricked immediately is just, in my opinion, poor handling of the mythic system. I'm not saying just give it extra life is the best idea. I'm sure there's different fixes that may be potentially better, but like the whole Mythic Plus system just isn't, honestly, a good system in the way that the keys work.
Really think that's going to be appealing to most. There's another one though, which is recommending similar skill levels, which I think is well-meaning, but probably wouldn't work out in reality. And that's because group leaders are usually doing, well, extra work because they want to pick better players. The last one's interesting though. It's recommending players based on similar goals. So basically, instead of joining a completion group like you do now, you could tag yourself as someone who wants to take it easy and just find matches that way. Though, to be honest, I'm not exactly sure that would be a great way to find matches. Now, Blizzard does
Just the overall, it's not like a bad system. It just doesn't really fit in super well. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I just don't think Blizzard can handle that. It's like Tinder, where as a girl, you get 9,000 matches. And as a guy, you're playing competitive swipe simulator to get 1 match every 1,000 swipes. It just doesn't feel like it would work well. And I feel like it would be a shittier system once being implemented than it would be otherwise. And I think they should honestly, in my personal opinion, avoid it. They should honestly avoid it. I don't think the devs should handle Mythic Plus in like higher tier gameplay, because I don't think they can solve it.
Know that people want changes here. In an interview with Marcellian and Flame at Gamescom, Paul Cubitt hinted that this kind of change is planned for Midnight. But ultimately, I think minor improvements aren't very engaging here. Suggestions might shift the needle, but nothing more, and that's not transformative. Which is why people are skipping to the fun part of all this, which is talking about solo queue Mythic Plus. Because in many ways it feels inevitable at this point, but what's interesting is that this time around, people don't really agree. This time people are honing in on what a solo queue won't fix, rather than what it would fix. And one of those things is that Mythic Plus is very heavily weighted towards the higher end. And up there in the higher end, things are extremely healthy right now. So the concern is that splitting the player base across pugging and solo queue could actually be quite risky. And from what we can see, that actually seems to have happened over in PvP. Now, we've not done a full investigation, so take this with a grain of salt, but we have seen talk about how solo shuffle and blitz haven't really fixed PvP problems like some people expected. Now, another thing is the fear that Mythic Plus solo queue might sound good, but have consequences, like, say, point 2. Why would tanks and healers use it? Because right now, they can open the pre-made group finder and grab any key or group that they want effortlessly.
That is true. As a tank, unless it's very late at night or very late in the season where people are looking for very, very specific comps, because, the keys, resetting in 6 hours the week, I can get a key in 5 minutes tops as a tank. And that's assuming like it's a plus 12, 13 or 14, and those keys, it takes more time to find than just like, if I apply for a plus 9 or a 10, I get a key instantly. Instantly I'm invited. But for higher keys, it does take a little bit of longer time. So it is kind of interesting and funny. So yes, a lot of tank and healer players are definitely going to complain and be unhappy about that.
The main people who want a solo queue are DPS, who are just tired of constant rejection. So a solo queue would basically stick those players in a long waiting time instead, and that may not be ideal to them. I would say that realistically, tanks and healers would need heavy incentives to give up their ability to choose whatever key they're going to do. And actually, that's one of the other problems. A solo queue would need a way to build groups ensuring that they've got things like Bloodlust. And then there are dungeon choices and key level options to worry about as well. Basically, a lot of things make it honestly incompatible with how Mythic Plus is designed right now. And
the thing is, it's like, imagine saying you can solo queue, you can just queue up for a looking for mythic raid. That's effectively what this is. It's like, you can't make just the average player group together without any like real cohesiveness in higher and higher keys. No, I don't think anybody would be trying to do a plus 15 that just randomly pugged people. People want to look at what you've accomplished, your rating, how many times you've cleared a plus 14 or a 13 or a 12 or a this. They want to see your capabilities. They want to see the compatibility between you and them and their playstyle. So overall, there's a lot of like things that go into this that makes it hard for people to truly just you know, back and forth right off the bat.
Not necessarily in a bad way either, it's just different. So what would an actual solution look like? I'd say if I was Blizzard, I'd be looking really hard at how to get people to play tanks and healers in Mythic Plus. I think that's essentially the missing puzzle piece that will help everything else fall into place. Basically solve that, and low-round Mythic Plus may not be a constant problem. Rather like our next almost constant problem. The belt. So Blizzard have got tired of people complaining about belts, so when patch 11.25 drops, they're going to be nerfing the Titan Disc belt once and for all with a sweeping 20% nerf across the best abilities that basically just means DPS players will want to swap it out for something that is better. Now, I hope we can get a proper blue post or some dev communication on what their actual intent for these items is. I mean, I think we all agree that Cersei's Circlet and this belt were basically the same thing twice in a row. They were a strong mid-season boost that felt nice at the time, but ended up being too strong for the next season, so basically that ended up reducing our loot options, that ended up being frustrating for character progression. But the good news in how they've done this is you've got a while to find a replacement belt. 11.25 should be dropping in about a month or so from now, so that's absolutely enough time to get something to swap the Titan Disc out with. As for an official release date, I think we'll get...
Giving a whole month to find a better belt is pretty solid, but that just means people are going to keep using it for about another month, give or take.
One fairly soon, but there is another thing, which is the announcement and the big push around Midnight Alpha, which is also going to be soon. But not before making sure that LFR is not a complete nightmare. Because my god, I've seen the reports. Have you suffered by trying Demencius in LFR or story mode? Happy to say that I haven't, but it really seems like it's not going well for people. Blizzard pushed a wave of hotfixes to try and stop basically LFR trolling. So
the issue, it's just an LFR issue. It's like the people doing LFR, or the people doing looking for raid stuff like that, and just in general story mode, is they're not there to actually enjoy the raid. They're there to clear it and just get their weekly loot or finish their quest or the storyline. So when LFR has a lot of mechanics, it's not really translating well to the kind of people you're bringing to LFR. They're literally there with their brain turned off just to experience and dive into the content. And that's the big issue. That's the big problem, is that these people do not want to try. So you can't force them to try. You can't force them to dive into things. It's just simply what it is.
So now, if somebody flies over to start the fight early, the whole raid is teleported there instead of just that poor soul dying alone. Demencius' knockback has also been changed, so it's a straight knock up rather than a knock back, because, yeah, people were just getting yoked into oblivion.
Yeah,
and in story mode, they've removed a phase 3 ability entirely. And honestly, it just...
But like I said, it's story mode. It shouldn't have had this many mechanics in the beginning. The whole point of story mode difficulty should have been for you as a new player who's returning to the game or whatever to catch up on the story and what's happening and figure out what that is. Story mode doesn't really give loot that anybody really gives a flying shit about or a singular shit about. So the fact that there was any difficulty to story mode, when I did story mode for the first time, that shit was buggy as fuck. I went in as a tank. The DPS NPCs did 0 damage. They did nothing. It was not a fun experience because of how much health, the mechanics, and the systems. Not to say Demencius is super hard or normal or even heroic in that context, but story mode having any difficulty was genuinely a bad point. It should have been a cutscene. It should have quite literally been you log in to go through a cutscene. And yeah, story mode equals game journalist mode. It should have literally been that, and they made it difficult. And it's the same thing in looking for raid though as well. The people in looking for raid genuinely do not have brain cells because they're not trying to have brain cells, not trying to think whatsoever.
It just seems that last bosses are kind of too complex for LFR, which is probably something Blizzard should keep in mind for the future, just in how they do the launch version of their final bosses. As for the other difficulties, well, my guild has been having a brilliant time progressing, and it'll be a little easier now that ad health has actually been nerfed for smaller groups, which is another thing that Blizzard should try and fix. So, as an example, we usually run 12 to 14 people, and we constantly run into issues with too many mechanics. Now, that sounds honestly hilarious, right? It's like, oh no, there's too many mechanics for a tiny little heads. It's less that, and it's more actually raid balance for different group sizes. One example is, well, Next is King Salad Bar. So we got him down last week, and then right after we got him down, he was nerfed for small group sizes. And I guess it's kind of interesting, where at the smaller raid sizes, we consistently feel like we're racing nerfs so that we can beat the real fight. Luckily, we got there before the nerfs this time round, but it does seem the group size and difficulty consistency is an ongoing story. And listen, it has been for a long ass time. I remember even, say, Council 10 back in the days of Throne of Thunder, if you remember that thing before it was nerfed. Anyway, these LFR nerfs are a good call.
It's hard to really balance a game like retail because of the varying skill levels. Some people would say 10-man raids should be harder because there's 10 more skilled people, but sometimes there's 10 casual people trying to raid together. So it's like, who does Blizzard balance difficulty and gameplay around? And Blizzard to this day still has no clue on how to really truly balance the raiding scene for different varying group sizes. They've gotten much, much better over the years, but it's still kind of funny that if you're a decent guild, you're racing to keep having a sweaty, interesting time. If you're a casual guild, you're literally waiting for the raid to get easier so your guild can actually clear it. Either way, both sides are going to clear up, and both sides are going to have a semi-frustrating experience because of how the raiding difficulties work. I honestly feel like there needs to be a third difficulty. There needs to be normal. There needs to be like a decent, then heroic, then mythic.
In the case of people just trolling or struggling on story mode. Okay, so that is it for the main news this week. At least the news about Blizzard's World of Warcraft. But someone else is doing a World of Warcraft.
He's talking about the Total WoW situation in the background. There'll be a link to Belladur's video in the description down below, so go check him out. Great content creator. Pretty much everybody reacts to this man. He is the face of World of Warcraft news, so if you care about World of Warcraft news, go check him out. Top tier creator, absolute goddamn legend. And I watched his Total WoW as a criminal front video. It was really, really interesting. He went into details that pushed Total WoW to like the greater scheme, like the wider audience. But for a lot of people, it was kind of, it's Total WoW, right? Like they didn't know about this before. Now they find out somebody's doing a private server of Classic Plus. That's insane. Really good video. You should check that out as well. But thank you all for watching. If you like this video, like and subscribe. If you hated it, understandable. Dislike and subscribe. It's a second channel video. Who cares? It is what it is. Thank you all. Eben Hard out. Peace.